Welcome to the Masters of Resilience podcast. This show is an exploration of the unseen and unheard stories of adversity that shape the journeys of high performers. These conversations will help you better understand the mindset, habits, and behaviors that empower these exceptional leaders to endure the most challenging moments of their careers and emerge stronger than ever. Your hosts are Ryan Seeger and Mark Phillips. Let's dive in to more.
Thanks for joining us and welcome back to the Masters of Resilience podcast, where we uncover stories of individuals that embody perseverance, purpose, and unwavering faith. Today, we're joined by Jake Cousins. Jake is a Major League Baseball pitcher whose journey is a powerful example of trusting the process and leaning into the strength of community. From navigating the highs and lows of professional sports to staying grounded in his faith, Jake's story highlights the importance of resilience, the impact of a strong support system, and the belief that growth comes through challenges. Get ready to be inspired by his journey and his wisdom that he's gained along the way. I know you'll enjoy this conversation. Let's get into it. Well, Jake, thanks for joining us on Masters of Resilience podcast. We're excited to have you here, and we'd love to start with your story, how you found baseball and your upbringing, and let's start there, and we'll dive in.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, guys. I've been playing baseball forever, so it's like, where's it start? I'm like, it's before I even have memories, honestly.
Good.
I've been swinging a bat, jumping, running, doing everything forever. So had a dad as a coach, like all the way through till I got to high school, pretty much. Played at Wheaton Academy that I know you guys went to as well, and
Three alums, right here.
Incredible people there. Yeah, met incredible people there. That took me to some incredible places, and went to University of Pennsylvania, where I roomed with another Wheaton Academy alum, and played for 4 years there, college ball, and then was drafted in 2017 by the Nationals. Spent about 2 years with them, had some injury stuff, ended up getting released in 2019 while I had like a lat strain, and went home, was working landscaping while going to PT in the afternoon, living at my in-laws' house, just kind of scrapping things together, trying to make some money.
Living the dream, I guess, is really
living
what
the
they say,
absolute
right?
pro ball dream.
Yeah, dude. Jeez.
So yeah, trying to rehab everything, make some money. I was been married for 2 years at that point to my high school sweetheart, and then eventually like got healthy enough to want to try and play with a team. So I played indie ball, ended up signing with a team at indie ball with the Schaumburg Boomers. So I got to play close to home, which was a blessing for like the first time since high school. So in like 4 or 5 years, I got to play at home, which was really fun. Played there for a month and a half. Ended up getting picked up by the Milwaukee Brewers in like middle of June that year in 2019. Played with there through, I guess the next year was COVID. So I played there for 3 months. Then I was going to spring training, was there for about a week. Had a really good year the year before. I was really looking forward to it. And 2 weeks into spring training, everything shut down. So I had to hop in the car and drive home, and which was is actually a wild story, because my wife had gotten into a car accident, and she's fine. But our car was totaled the week before. We're in Phoenix, Arizona. We drove the car down. Car gets totaled, so we don't have a car. And then a week later, COVID happens, shuts the whole world down. So we're now stuck in Phoenix with no car and have to like get a rental and drive 26 hours from Phoenix home to go live at her in-laws' house in 2020. Again. Yeah.
Oh, dude.
Because the pro ball money until you get to the big leagues is extremely sparse. So we're just trying to make ends meet at this point. And so 2020 year, they have like this alternate site. If you're not in the big leagues, they invite some players that they kind of want to keep ready in case they need to call you up. I was not invited to that. So I ended up, I started working for FedEx, doing like some warehouse stuff. I was also started working for a baseball team, like to coach a team. And then I think it was like July, I got a call from my agent, and they're like, hey, have you been throwing it all? I'm like, no. I'm like, not really. I thought this year was done. And he's like, all right, well, like I started to pick up a baseball because like the Brewers have thought about like bringing you to the alt site.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, like, so instantly I grab like we're in Georgia when I'm told this at the tournament. And so I grab one of the kids' gloves and start playing catch in the parking lot, like with our assistant coach. And then like a week later, they're like, do you want to play independent league baseball again to like stay ready? I was like, sure, that sounds good. Like, didn't even know this was an opportunity. So I signed on with the Chicago Dogs, which I got to play home again in Rosemont. So played, had a really good year. I was going into like my free agent year as well. So it was really important for me to throw and like have numbers. So ended up signing again with the Brewers, got invited to big league camp that year for the first time, which was a massive triumph. And dealt with a lot of stress and adversity that year. Like the blessing it was to be in big league camp, but at the same time, like one of the last guys invited. So they did this thing a couple of months or like a month in the spring. They took the big league team and the guys that they wanted to contribute to an alternate site again. Because the minor league season started like a month late. And I was told on the very last day that I wasn't going to go. And I didn't have like anywhere to live. Like my wife and I were down there. We were like, we don't have a place to stay. So we have to figure all this out. Extremely stressful. So I ended up staying there, went to AA that year. And then within 7 weeks was making my big league debut. That year, which was incredible. Had an amazing year playing in Milwaukee, close to family and friends and just everyone that helped me get there. And it was incredible. And then 2022, like came in on cloud nine to spring training, made the opening day roster for the first time. Opening day in Chicago, Wrigley Field, like stuff of so dreams cool. And everything you could ever think of as like growing up wanting to play baseball and being a Cubs fan. A month into that season had injured my UCL. So I had to get an injection in my UCL. They sent me to Arizona, which is like no one's down there. So like you're kind of in this like isolated island. My wife and I just living down there. It's 115 every day. Not super enjoyable. So rehab that, and then it was kind of like up and down that year once I came back healthy. 23, similar to that, like ended up getting DFA'd, which is I got fired basically from the Brewers, and another team, the Astros, picked me up, but things were just like I was just not performing well. My body wasn't feeling great. There was things that I didn't know what was going on. But it was like my first time, like I'd always thrown well, but this was my first time really dealing with like failure. Like a lot of times my failure has been in the form of like injuries and like trying to stay on the field, and which is a whole nother battle, especially mentally. But this is my first time where I was like failing on the field, which was tough to deal with. I was DFA'd again by the Astros like a month later. And this time no one picked me up. So I just like finished the year in AAA there. And then I signed a free agent deal with the White Sox in the minor leagues this past year. So going to spring training, trying to make the team. And on the last day of spring training, it was between me and two other guys for 2 spots. And I was the one guy that they chose not to take to the big leagues. Which ended up being like historically the worst team in baseball. So like
so bad. Yeah.
That was kind of a tough
blessings in disguise. Yeah.
A blessing, but I was like, I really can't make this team. Like
oh man, that's true.
Yeah. So it was like but I ended up getting traded to the Yankees like 2 days later, after not making the team, which I had an opt-out in my contract, but it hardly ever works. But it ended up working for me. So I went to AAA.
What does that mean, an opt-out, Jake? You could have said no to the trade?
No, so there's different levels of opt-outs. I try to get an opt-out built in my free agent signing that says, like, if I don't make the team, I can just opt out of my contract and become a free agent. So they didn't give me that kind of opt out. They gave me what they call an upward mobility, which means if I don't make the team, they send my name out to every other team and saying, hey, if you want this guy, take him. And you have to put him on your big league team. So that's when I got traded to the Yankees. That's basically what happened, is that they saw me like, hey, we want him. So like, it was technically a trade. I found out later that I was traded for $1, a single dollar, which I thought was pretty funny.
It's funny now, I'm sure.
It's funny now.
Man.
Yeah. I was like, not even like a bag of like,
Come on, just give me a little bit here.
yeah, a little bit more.
Man.
I actually found that out during the World Series, which was just kind of ironic in the whole sense of it.
It really is.
But yeah, so traded to the Yankees, met the team in Arizona, was dealing with some forearm pain that I had like picked up in spring. But like brand new team, didn't really want to say anything, so pitched through it for a couple weeks. They ended up sending me to AAA, and like when I got sent down, I was like, guys, I'm hurting. So they put me on the IL in AAA. So I rehabbed there for like 2 months. And then as soon as I was done with rehab, the Yankees called me back up to the big leagues, and then stayed there the rest of the year and had like, I mean, an incredible year playing for the New York Yankees. Like just like stuff I never even thought about, especially when the season was starting, signing with the White Sox, and just a crazy like turn of events that I could have never like planned for myself. Like totally like, I think like God just had me in his hands, and he had a plan for me that I couldn't have drawn up a plan like this myself. To go through all the ups and downs, and then like long story short, to end the season playing for the New York Yankees in the World Series against the Dodgers and throwing in the first 3 games, like just, I mean, it didn't end up the way we wanted to, but yeah, I mean, just stuff that I'll be telling my family and kids about forever. So, yeah, incredible year. I mean, I've had insane up and downs, and it's like, yeah. It's been
And
a
so
long
where does
journey.
it sit now with you? So you still sit with the Yankees. How is that contract? Is that longer term? Is that short term? What does that look like?
So baseball's fun in that once you make it to the big leagues, the teams own your rights for 7 years, which is an extreme amount of time, especially for someone like me who didn't make his debut until I was 28. So like for me to get to free agency, the long way, which is playing 7 straight years of big league time, I'd be 35, which it's not super realistic. So yeah, this year I have like around 2.5 years of service time. I have 1 option left in my contract, so they can still like DFA or fire me whenever they want. And there's no like repercussions for that. But they also can just send me to AAA whenever they want. So it's really, baseball contracts are confusing. You see all the big ones, like the 10-year for $360 million, like those guys aren't super often. The majority of the guys are like me that are like trying to stay, have like thrown well, but it's just like you have to get your foot in the door and you have to throw well in the limited opportunities you get. So yeah, I mean, I'm always every day go out there and pitching for my life and my job to try and keep it. So it's it's pretty stressful.
That's really stressful. Why are baseball contracts so much more, it feels like they're more team friendly than they are player friendly. And I think other sports like collective bargaining agreements, things like that have kind of put more power in the hands of the athlete as opposed to the team. What do you think it is about baseball?
I think they're like players are trying to obviously swing it in their direction. Teams are the same. Like everyone wants the leverage. Our last CBA, we did a good job of raising standards for like league minimum players, as they call them, like guys that make the base salary, which is the majority of the league. A lot of times they'll fight for like total dollars made for players. But a lot of times that can come in the form of, like you see the Juan Soto contract, like $760 million. Like, yeah, it's an unbelievable contract to have like in the history for a player. but like it just doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
But there's smaller market teams that need to have control over young, like less expensive players. Like the Brewers, like teams that have like $60 to $75 million payrolls that like just don't have the same like money generation that like the Yankees and the Dodgers and like these massive markets have. So there's a lot of like, it's hard to, some teams literally can't afford some players, but there's also like times when like teams will tank so that they can get higher draft picks and that they can share in like the money revenue sharing that they have where like the biggest teams pay like basically a tax to the teams that make the least amount of money.
You don't appreciate how much is business and not just athletics.
Yeah.
Right?
And as soon
so
as,
much more than throwing a ball.
And it feels very like, oh, it's just baseball.
Right.
Until the first time you get DFA'd or like the first time you get released. And then it's like,
what does DFA stand for? What does that actually mean?
Designated for assignment.
Got it. It's
So
a nice way to say pink slipped, I think is what they say in the business world.
Yeah.
Fired.
We don't want you. Yeah.
We don't want you.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's like,
man.
So there's a 26-man roster in the big leagues.
Yeah.
And then there's a 40-man roster, which
got it.
Are like players you can pull from to straight to the big leagues without like making any kind of moves or anything. So when you get DFA'd, it basically just means that they don't want you on their 40-man. And then like another team can take you. So like when I went from Milwaukee to Houston, like Houston was like, oh, we want him on ours. And then so I went straight to their 40-man. And the second time I got DFA'd, nobody wanted me. So like I just became like a normal minor league player again.
Fascinating.
Yeah, the baseball contracts are super convoluted. Yeah. It's not like other organizations where like you sign to the NFL and then like your salary is X and like you get a game check every week. It's like you spend, I think the average amount of time it takes is like 3.5 to 4 years to like actually make it to the big leagues. And during that time, you're making like $2,500 a month for 6 months. And then you don't get paid in the off season. So it was like, that's why I was living with my in-laws all the time.
Yeah. There's so many, I feel like there's so many themes that we could dive into here.
Yeah.
One of which I think kind of the uncertainty theme and volatility, I guess you could say too, jumps out to me. So let's talk about that a little bit. Like, how do you, again, because this is a, we're not talking decades here. This is the span of, some of these things are a couple of years where you're having to deal with being jerked around left and right and then up and down. So how do you, like, what were some of the things that when you're going through that you would get yourself to cling to when you're dealing with the uncertainty?
Yeah, I think I've always liked to have control, as anyone does, having control over their lives. But it did not take me long into pro ball to find out that I had zero control. Which is a tough thing to let go of. But I think when the first time I was released and was like working in 35 degrees, like planting flowers in front of like office buildings, trying to like make some money for my wife and I, while also rehabbing, was like just a big moment of having to like release control over my life. Luckily I had like a Christian foundation for my parents, and from Wheaton Academy and a lot of community growing up, that I knew who to release like the reins over to. So like releasing the control over my life to the Lord was just like freed up so much. And when I first realized that was when I got released, and like going into independent league for the first time was like, I just let it go. And it was like a massive weight was off my shoulders, and I was just able to play freely. And just know like, if this was meant to be, then like God will put things in my path and make things happen that he wants to. And like, as soon as I did that, it was, I started throwing harder. I started throwing better. I mean, it was like
wild. That's so crazy.
It was wild. And yeah, like signed by the Brewers. And then like within a year or two, I was in the big leagues. And not that it was like this dream, like as soon as I did that, it was like this vertical path. Like there was definitely like, I mean, COVID was in there. I was DFA'd twice in there. Like there's a lot of moments where like I still got knocked off my totem pole.
So what were the kind of things that you would do to get yourself to that point?
I think a big thing was relying on my community that I built up throughout the past. So my parents, my wife, I have a cousin that plays in the NFL, like all extremely strong Christians. And I found the community for me is like a huge aspect of who I am and how I like root myself. So leaning on those people when I was in like those darker times when things were not going my way and I was questioning like whether I keep playing or like all my friends are being successful in their careers and I'm 26, 27, like planting flowers and working at FedEx at midnight. Like, am I going the right direction? And it was in those moments where like I had to talk to people that I really put faith in and trust in, and ultimately, like I said, like put the control into the Lord. And a big one now that I use is kind of be where your feet are. Is like a big thing that I have tried to harp on myself over the last 2 years. And having options in baseball is tough because you at any moment you can get called to the manager's office and sent to AAA. And having a wife and now a 2-year-old daughter and like having to uproot our lives potentially like day to day is stressful and exhausting. But something that my wife is really good at doing is reminding me like, hey, like we're here, like let's be here. Let's not like like, hey, you're in AAA, like let's use AAA to like there's a reason we're here, like let's get better, let's get healthier, let's work on stuff, and like when the time is right we'll get called back and we'll use everything we did down here to prosper at the next level. And it's easier said than done because there's a lot of pulling back and forth and like I am throwing well, like why do I have to go down? And like, oh well, there's contract reasons or whatever else. And it's like, okay, like take that for what it is. Take a day to be, I usually give myself 24 hours to kind of be a baby about things. And like I'll complain to my wife and I'll be, oh, like why me? But then after that 24 hours, there's like a hard, like, okay, like now it's time to,
that's so good.
To get back on the gas pedal and get going.
Yeah. Man, I come at things from the world of entrepreneurship, Jake. I appreciate the analogies to athletics. I use them often with the founders that I talk to, but we'll see if they hold here. Someone I really respect, I shared recently with me this idea that the people that have had success in startups or entrepreneurship or even just business are people that have been through pain and have learned how to use it properly. And I man, like you're being, you shared your story really authentically, and I appreciate that. And like, there's some real moments of pain in there. You know, when you're like, you're hurt, you're DFA'd, you're living in your in-laws' house, working for a blue collar job that you probably never thought you'd be working, like nobly trying to serve your wife, man, that's pain. And so I don't know if you've kind of thought about that. And I'm struck by this idea that once you're able to endure that pain and come back from it, then you started throwing it even harder. And then these things started to go, right? And then the kind of compound interest of like laying it down brick by brick started to kick in. And overnight success is such a lie, but you find yourself, of course, then in the World Series. That's unbelievable, man. And so what has that relationship with pain been like for you? And how have you chosen to not let it bring you down, but actually, as far as I can tell from your story, lift you up?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's a lot of moments, even just like the physical pain and like going through injuries too. And like, being told you can't do something that you've been doing your whole life for 2 months that are things that like put food on the table for your family. And, it's tough. It's like, you just trying to think here. Lost my train of thought.
Yeah, it's all good. I mean, what I'm interested in though is like, I think sometimes people who have a lot of resilience don't even really realize that they're being resilient in the moment. Because and what I'm struck by is that same story for you. I mean, again, back to what Ryan said, it's like you're getting pushed and shoved in so many different directions, and yet your focus seemed to stay intact. And I'm really struck by that. I think it's just I don't know if there's anything you were doing intentionally there. I think it sounds like your faith has been a huge part of the equation for you, but really special to hear about that. Yeah.
And I think that in 2019, like similar time when I handed the reins over of like the control I wanted was similar to like handing over the future of especially baseball. Like baseball can be something that, as with anything, like anything that you put all of your time and effort and money and everything into can become like an idol, like idolatry on something that you put your whole life into. And I think like I struggled with idolatry with baseball for a long time as being how I described myself as like, well, who are you? Like, oh, I'm Jake. I play baseball. And like, that would be how like I would describe myself. And I think like becoming a husband and then especially becoming a father, was like a big, like, hey, this is like I could be done playing by 33 and have 60 more years of life. Like this is going to be such a small aspect of my life. Not that it's not insignificant in any regard. But just the fact that like, I think like I said, having my daughter was like the biggest, like, this is why we do what we do. And
it's cool.
And even like moments of like, I would throw horrible, or like throw terrible on like a massive stage, like in front of 50,000 people, and then let alone people watching on TV. But then, and like in the moment, it feels like the biggest thing in the world. But then when the game would end and I'd like change and get ready to go, and like my daughter would run to me from like the kids' room.
So awesome.
Like I have never failed ever. Like the way she looked at me, just like really put in perspective, like what is important, and like what weighs heavily on you.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
I think parenting, parenting, marriage, those two things, when you put those in the mix of being a professional athlete or a business person, entrepreneur, like it totally changes the dynamic. And I think seeing those things for kids, like, I mean, again, we're all three dads here. I think it's a perspective that I think immediately shapes things. At least it has for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. And like before I had those, it was community. Like it was my family, my parents, like my teammates, like people that I could trust and rely on, and people that you don't have to be perfect in front of, like people you can fail in front of, and that don't like change their perception of you after failure or after being in the World Series. Like regardless of how you perform, like they view you the same.
That's so
like
powerful,
having those
man.
people in your life are really important.
Jake, take us to the mound, man. You're in the World Series. You're just throwing heat. I watched some highlights before the call, and man,
thanks.
it was awesome. It was awesome to watch. I mean,
I watch them too. So
everyone, okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. I would do the exact same thing. Everyone listening has been in. I was watching the Chiefs Bills game last night. My wife was like, "How is Josh Allen not like trembling in his shoes right now?" Those moments are intense. They're really intense. And you've got to stay focused. Just take us in the mind of Jake Cousins on the mound, pitching in the World Series. Like, what are you thinking about? What are you not thinking about?
Honestly, the hardest part is the anticipation of pitching in the World Series. Like once I'm out there, I'm doing what I've trained my body and mind to do for 30 years. Like when I'm in the moment, when I'm pitching best, I am totally present. I am not questioning anything. Like I can't hear anything. I'm like totally locked into this tunnel.
That's
where
so
it's just
intense.
me and the catcher, and like I can see a hitter's, like I can see their body, but I'm not even thinking about them. That's when like things are great and like things are vibing. I'm trusting in everything I throw, all my preparation. I think a lot of times in sports we talk about like being process oriented. Especially in a game where you play 162 times in 180 days, you have to have a process that you trust every day. So it's like Yeah, I think like the anticipation, I think when I'm in the bullpen,
Right.
and I think I'm getting close to my, like, this might be my situation, like, that's when the nerves hit you. And I mean, 100% warming up in Dodger Stadium before game one, like in the bullpen, I could not feel my legs. Like, there's no doubt about it. It was an out of body experience.
Wow. That's
But
so
it's in those
crazy.
moments where I've been in big moments before. Obviously, this was the biggest. But I think like getting through all the bigger moments that led you up to that, like those were all the biggest moment of your life at that point. So like you learn from times when you're in those moments, and it was just like, control your breathing. We are like, look at how far you've come. Like, who could have asked for this? And it's just like this state of like thankfulness and gratitude that I started to really lean on in college. That like, it just puts you in a state of peace where you just feel like it's not like a who cares what happens, like this is incredible, like let's just go for it. But it is like a sense of like, I have an incredible community behind me. I've worked my butt off for this moment. Like, I'm just going to trust in what I've done my whole life and like let the cards fall where they may. I'm going to control what I can control, which is I'm going to control my pitch. What happens after that is not in my hands. And
yeah, dude, that's so
see
good.
what happens. Which is, I mean, it took a heck of a long time to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Inputs, not outputs, right? At some point, it's out of your control. Do you, in the professional athlete world, are there coaches? Are there resources within the context of the team to help you with some of that mindset work?
Yeah. So there's, I think as of like 3 years ago, probably almost every team has like a sports psych that's on staff. It's all like as you want it. Like, they're not like, hey, you have to meet with them. So I did a little bit of sports like training. I think a lot of mine was just learned from trial and error.
Yeah.
And like talking to other people, and like, that's the biggest thing with baseball is we sit around at a field for so long that we just talk to each other all the time. And like, I always am just trying to pick guys' brains. Like, especially now I'm on a team with potential future Hall of Famers, like guys that have really made a name for themselves in the sport. So like, picking their brains when I can, how they prep, like watching how they prep, how they get work done in the training room. Just like all these little things that they do, like the process that they put together for themselves. I've always tried to kind of like pick things from every guy that like, oh, that looks really good. Like, I'll try that out and see how it fits on me. And that's where I feel like I've gotten a lot of these things, is like failing and being like, okay, like that didn't work. Like, let's think about a new process. And then putting that in place.
So what are the things that you pick up or you have picked up in those conversations that you felt like has been helpful for you?
So the gratitude thing I got from like a sports psych in college. I was just like a little bit unhappy at the time. I experienced a lot of success early in college baseball, and then like kind of started to not fail necessarily, but fail for what my standards were that I held myself to. And like, school was tough. Academically was having a hard time. Was long distance with my now wife. So like, things were just like, there's times when I was just like, feel like I was kind of treading uphill. And like getting gratitude from a sports psych and kind of trying to view everything in a grateful lens. In the beginning, almost to a fault, to where like, I'd be like, thank you for putting me in this situation. Like, it's going to be another opportunity for me to grow. Or like walking around campus trying to think of like things I'm grateful for, like thankful that I can go to class, thankful that I can go to weights, like just the little things, like the mundane things that you take for granted in your day to day. I tried to kind of view and like this, like, wow, I'm so blessed to be able to even like be on this campus and like all these things that like I kind of took for granted. And then other things I'd take is like a lot of things, like the way guys work on their bodies, things that they find that work well versus not. I mean, there's so many different modalities that you can pick. And then like weight room stuff, how guys take care of their bodies in the weight room. Like, we are playing 162 games. So it's not like a typical weight room schedule where you're going in every day. There's a lot of like pick and take. Some guys work out every Tuesday, Friday, like regardless of where they're at. Other guys work out based on like their current workload. So there's a lot of things that you have to learn once you get to the big leagues of like how to take care of yourself. And like when I made my debut, I had Josh Hader and Devin Williams to look at. Like, not sure how much you guys know about baseball, but like two of the best relievers in baseball for the past 5 to 8 years. So like I got to watch them and their process and how they prepared their bodies for a game, and learned that if I can like do the same thing before I pitch, prepare my body, and I feel like, okay, like I've prepared myself in the best way I can, then I can go out to the mound with like complete confidence that regardless of what happened, like I don't have to look back and be like, oh, like I didn't do this enough or I didn't do that. Like I had a process, I executed it, and whatever happens, whatever happens. Like,
yeah, it's good.
I did what I could do, kind of thing.
Powerful. You keep coming back to the inputs versus outputs, and I'm struck by it. And it's really, in the world of sports, there's an instantaneous scoreboard.
Yeah.
So you know the answer pretty quick. I think in life, whether it's like our marriages or our jobs, you just got to. The process is there for a reason. So I really appreciate that, Jake. I'm imagining someone listening right now. Maybe they're younger. Maybe it's a dad who's going to play it with their kid. And I'm struck by just the incredibly narrow margins of professional athletics, right? Like the difference between you making it and somebody else not. There's 2 other guys who are on the White Sox, and you don't get picked up, and then you get to the Yankees. Like that's crazy. That's amazing. But even just in like, my guess is you would probably agree that there's hundreds, if not thousands, of other pitchers in the country who just don't get that break for whatever reason. They didn't pitch well that day when the scout was in the stands.
Yep.
Man, how do you process just the incredibly narrow margins? And maybe even like imagine you're speaking to a kid who wants to go pro in professional baseball and maybe feels a little bit intimidated by that process.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like there's a lot of luck and timing and things falling in your direction like that have to take place, especially like to get to the big leagues specifically. Because once you get there, I mean, there's 26 guys on the team, and some of those guys stick around for 10 years. So it's like,
right.
It's not like there's this unbelievable amount of spots that keep coming up. I think it's just that like you just have to keep attacking. You just have to keep like, you never know when someone's going to be watching. You never know like what day is going to be the day where you finally like break through the ceiling. Like, and there's going to be plenty of guys that don't ever get to break through the ceiling. And that's just something I think you have to be comfortable like taking that risk. But it's almost not necessarily a risk because like you're doing something you love. And
that's right.
One of those things where,
that's right.
Especially in 2019 was like, I keep going back to that because that was a time where like I was questioning my future, especially like baseball and career. And I think there's a time where you have to be comfortable with not like holding anything back and being in a scenario where, hey, if baseball ended today, could I like look at myself and be proud of like the work that I put in, the hours I put in, and say like, yeah, there was nothing I could have done. Like I worked my butt off. I put everything I can into this. Like the cards just things didn't work out, whether it was luck or I wasn't skillful enough, like whatever it was, like I wasn't made to do this. But the work ethic and the process that I keep saying, but like those things, like I did everything I could.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is
that's so powerful, man.
And that's something I think that's how you can walk away and be proud of yourself and happy with yourself. Not like, dang, I failed. I didn't make it to the big leagues. Cause like the percentage of guys that actually play in the big leagues is so like microscopic. Yeah. But like being proud of the journey and like what you learned on the journey and what you've accomplished, I think is like the biggest part.
Some of what I'm hearing too, and I think when you think about whether it be professional athletes or Jeff Bezos or Warren Buffett, like all these people, like, this over time, and this has been a recurring theme, is like you put the fundamentals together day after day after day, and then you let time compound in addition to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it ends up becoming something that, again, you've built it to the point where now I can step on the mound, so to speak, and I can deliver with confidence, knowing that I've done the work. And again, sometimes that's gonna lead to maybe not lead to a win, but to your point, I've given it the best effort that I possibly have.
Yeah. And that's what I think is like the base to everything, is like, if you get to the end and things don't work out, but you can look back and say, I gave it my best, then there's like a certain amount of like pride you can have in that. And you won't almost feel like you failed, because you know that like you worked so hard for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a really big one to fall back on.
Jake, we're going to clip this next part and send it to your wife. So I'm going to give you a T-ball. What has been the level of importance of your wife in this entire journey?
It's massive. So we met in high school, dated long distance for 4 years. I was in Philadelphia and she was in Nashville for college, which set us up. The amount of things that taught us, like dating long distance for 4 years, like led us into baseball, which was going to be so like tumultuous. But having her is huge. I mean, especially now with the daughter, like they mean the world to me, and everything I do is for them and like for our future together. So like I want them to experience everything together. You never know how long it's going to last. So like I said, my daughter's been on 42 flights in her 2 years of life, and I've probably been on 2 of those with them. So my wife's flying solo with a now 2-year-old.
Yeah.
2 checked bags, 2 carry-ons. Like
we've all been there with flying with kids. It's a thing.
It's tough.
It's a situation, is what it is.
It's tough when it's like, and we're 2 versus 1 when we do it together. When it's just her, like carrying this. She's like carrying her in one arm. She's got the car seat in the other. Like, I just can't even. It's amazing,
beast
like
mode.
the strength that she showed me through all this.
Truly.
But the way that she keeps our family together, especially like during the baseball season, is amazing. The divorce rate in baseball is like 50 something, or no, higher than 50. It's like 60 or 70%.
Wow.
So we went in knowing what it was, and we're so committed that like we are going to put each other first. So a lot of times like we have to put the money in the bank account on the back burner and say, hey, like, yes, it's going to cost us another $1,000, but I need you guys to be with it. Like, we need our family to stick together. And even like professionally, having my family there and having a comfort and support system, like always there to have your back, lets me play on the field and play freely.
Yeah.
So like the amount of times that she's sacrificed, I mean, career-wise, she does not have the opportunity to have a career. She travels. She's a single mom pretty much 75% of the year. Dealing with to and from games, it's travel to and from the house, like keeping everything in order. It's amazing. It's incredible. Yeah. And like the last 2 years, especially like with my daughters, been amazing to watch.
Yeah.
Are there things in marriage that you guys have done that you feel like it's kind of been your rock, so to speak, or like habits that you guys have done? I know Jenna, my wife, and I have tried to do a couple things, because again, you have those weeks, and yours is far worse than mine. But like things that ground you guys that you've done that's been helpful.
So I think we've like organically, through all of our long distance in college, especially, learned how to deal with long distance. So like whether it's FaceTiming like in the morning to like start our day, and like just kind of like start our day together, even if we're not like physically together. And then all this the same with like ending our day, like just making sure we end our day very like intentionally, to kind of just show them that like we are in this together. And a big thing for me and my wife is being, like I said, intentional, but also intentional with like our time and thoughtfulness towards each other. Trying to show like trying to show love and appreciation from across the country. Like there's only so many I love you texts that are going to like really hold like that, like emotional weight.
Yes.
So there's a lot of like, or try and like surprise her with something, or like be intentional. Like, hey, like I asked your parents to come over and watch our daughter so that you can like go get a massage and like go have some alone time, or, which I'm still working on. Like in no way am I
we all
incredible at this. Like,
yeah.
My wife's probably listening like, oh, really? Like you're saying this?
Massage, huh?
I haven't gotten a massage in a while, Jake. Yeah, that's good.
Due for one of those right about now.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's
But yeah,
good.
I think
I appreciate that's honest, man. And it's just being like showing her that she's the thing you're thinking about. Like there's a lot of power in that.
Which is tough when like I'm sitting in whatever. I'm sitting in Texas, like about to play the Rangers that night. Like was up until 2 a.m. Our schedules are so crazy different, especially during the season. Like I'll wake up at 11 because I went to bed at 3 because we had like a night game, and my wife's at home with our daughter, so she's like in bed at 8, up at 6. So it's like, and that's where there's not like a ton of time for us to really have like intentional moments. So we really have to like put that stress in those important moments.
Yeah. There's a quote I've been reflecting on quite a bit recently, Jake, and I'm just gonna we'll start to wrap up here a little bit. I'm just gonna throw it out there because I'm fascinated by the intersection for you of faith, family, and professional sports. Like that's a really cool space that you're in. And I don't know how this quote will strike you, but I'm curious your answer. It goes, our greatest fear should not be of failure, but of succeeding at something that does not matter. As you think about the intersection of all three of those things in your world, what percolates for you? What comes up to the surface?
Yeah. That's a really cool quote. I mean, I think it's especially like getting to the pinnacle of the World Series this past year. It was like,
that's the whole thing right there.
It's those things where like you see the interviews with Tom Brady where it's like, I've won. I don't know if you've seen the interview where like he's talking about how many rings he's won.
Yeah.
And he's like, but what does it mean if there's no one to share it with? And that's like getting the World Series. I mean, the amount of people that I got to like my wife and my mom went out to LA and like getting to see them like before and after the game and like, can you believe this is happening? Like doing that in the mirror to myself would just not be nearly as fulfilling. And something I always like stress with my wife is like, when I speak about baseball, I always say we, because I couldn't do this without her. And I like fully mean that. And like, as much as this is my profession and it's me on the field, like it's so much her behind the scenes. And like when we went to New York, my whole family got to come. Her whole family was there. I mentioned like Ken that was there and like some college friends and like getting to see everyone in the tunnel. Even after we lost, like game 5, we lost. It was a pretty brutal game, but like I got to see all those people like in the tunnel and like just in that moment that I'd worked with all of them to get there. Like in no way did I get there myself. Like the guys I was in college with, I had like some college teammates, Ken, who I went to high school with, and then like my family who I grew up with. Like in all these different stages of my life and career, I had like different support systems, and getting to see all of them like celebrate with me and like look at what we've done together was incredible. Yeah. And like I couldn't even imagine not having to look up in the morning by myself and be like, this is cool. Like having people like really share it with is what it's all about.
Beautiful, man.
People you're fighting in the foxhole with or something.
Exactly. So well said. I imagine there's other professional athletes that just don't take the quality of relationships or the depth of relationships as seriously as you do. And so I hope that's an encouragement to you. I'm really struck by it. You seem to just put a lot of intentionality and remember the people that were there in, pick your point in life, 2019, right? You keep coming back to that. You remember the people that were still there. Yeah. And stay close to them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the people I lived in their house and they had to feed me every night. Like my in-laws feeding me and my wife every night because we couldn't afford a place. That's like, even those moments, we couldn't afford an apartment or food to like eat, but they so supported me and her that they were like, just live with us. will help you guys get back on your feet, like while you're in this moment of your journey. So it's like, there's just moments like that. And like, obviously my parents, I can't go without saying, like, them driving me to all of these ridiculous tournaments all over the country, like every single weekend of their summer being gone, like evaporated. And like my sisters that travel to all these things, like it's just all these people that are in your corner that it's like the day-to-day mundane things that like don't stick out to you. But when you look back at those moments, those are the moments that like truly shaped you as a person.
Yeah.
And yeah, like getting to look back and reflect, being in the World Series, reflecting over all of these small moments that came to this one was really cool.
So Jake, as we wrap here, if you were to give yourself a piece or two of advice, rewind the clock, you're in college, you're kind of starting this, what would you say to your now self or somebody in a similar situation?
Yeah, I would say, I think the process, trusting the process is a big one that I always kind of harp back onto myself. Just trusting that the work you're putting in every day is going to be enough. And that like when you fail or succeed at the end of the day, you can look back and know that you put the work in. And the second thing I would say, get a foundation, get a support system. Mine was my faith and my family, and like hold tight, like make sure those people know how much they mean to you. And just really lean on those people that you've surrounded yourself with, because they're going to, like, through thick and thin, those are the people that are going to build you up in those dark moments and cheer with you when you're on the mountain.
So
awesome.
Good.
You said something in there that I think I just want to call out, which is let them know how much they mean to you. And we're only just meeting now, Jake, but I imagine maybe that's a gifting of yours, of being able to express that. I think a lot of men, especially, we're bad at it. We're really bad at expressing, like, hey, I really appreciate it. You've kind of been forced into that. Without that expression of appreciation and gratitude, these relationships may have passed you by. So I'm really struck by that. I think that's some really powerful advice.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We had a right before the World Series, our sports psych with the Yankees had us sit down, and I really appreciate him for doing this. We sat down before we were going to LA, and he said, we're going to do an exercise for 5 minutes. Like, everyone bring your phones in. He said, you're going to look through your phone and you're going to pick 1, 2, I don't care how many people, like pick some people and text them and just tell them like how thankful you are to them for like getting you to this moment. And I think it was a big, like we were so wrapped up in like media and like, I mean, a million things that I've never seen, especially in New York, like I'd never seen before. To get in a moment like with all your teammates and just be like, hey, slow down, like thank the people that got you here. Yeah. And it was like a very like, oh, this is really cool.
Super
It's really nice to reflect on that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome.
So well said. Jake, thanks for spending time with us today, man. This has been so good. Yeah. I know people appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys having me on. This was fun.
Yeah, you bet, brother. You bet.
We'll see you in the World Series again next year, right?
That's right.
Here we go, man.
Here we go. Let's do it.
Podcast part 1.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah. That's great.
Thanks for engaging with this episode of the Masters of Resilience podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend or colleague. Stay up to date on all the latest episodes and get exclusive resources at mastersofresilience.com. We'll see you next time.